It was one of those nights where everything that could go wrong did, starting with the power going out right at dinner. I mean, I'm sitting there, fork halfway to my mouth, and suddenly the apartment turns into a pitch-black cave, the hum of the refrigerator cutting off like someone pulled the plug on the world. At first, I thought maybe it was just our unit, so I called the building manager, but nope, entire block was in the dark. Now here's the thing, I'm not great with the cold. Like, my tolerance for anything below 70 degrees is pretty much zero. And it was early November, which means the heater stops working if the power's out. I'd planned a cozy night in with Alex, my boyfriend who'd come over after work. We'd been texting all day, sharing dumb memes and making plans to binge watch some new show he was obsessed with. So, when the lights blinked off, I was halfway panicking about dinner getting cold and the apartment getting freezing. Alex wasn't far behind, showing up right after to this weird, semi-dark, chilly place that smelled faintly of burnt toast, because I'd forgotten the toaster was on when the power died. He laughed it off, pulling out his phone flashlight, the only light source now, and said, "Well, this is romantic in a post-apocalyptic kind of way." We both knew it wasn't. The temperature was dropping fast, and my teeth started to chatter before I even realized it. I grabbed a blanket from the couch, but it was like trying to catch smoke with your hands. Alex raised an eyebrow and, without missing a beat, said, "You know what? We should share body heat. It's the oldest trick in the book." I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he was totally serious. "Come here," he said, already pulling me toward the couch, where we ended up curled into the tiniest, warmest fort this apartment had ever seen. And yeah, it was a little awkward at first, two grown men suddenly realizing that survival instincts in city apartments probably don't include cuddling, but here we were. As the temperature outside dropped, something about that moment felt different. Not just because of the cold or the blackout, but because, in this weird, powerless void, it was just us. No distractions, no screens, no noise except our own breathing, and the quiet hum of the city beyond our windows. It was raw and simple, in a way I hadn't expected. And honestly, I didn't want to move. I didn't want the power to come back on, because for the first time in a long time, just sharing warmth with him felt like enough. But that's where things got complicated, and not in the way you might expect. I mean, who would have thought that losing power in an apartment could turn into one of the most electric nights of my life? So there we were, squeezed onto my tiny couch, wrapped in that ratty blanket, clinging to each other like two penguins stranded in a heatless Antarctic station. I'll admit, at first, it felt a bit like a survival tactic, kind of like, okay, share warmth so we don't turn into popsicles. But then, the reality hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. Alex shifted closer, tucking his head against my shoulder, and I could feel the steady thump of his heart beneath the fabric of his shirt. For a second, it was just quiet. No texts, no noise, just the rhythm of two people trapped in a powerless world. I guess you don't really notice how much you rely on electricity and all the distractions until they're ripped away, leaving just the bare bones of connection. He looked up at me, eyes glinting in the dim light from his phone, and said softly, "You know, I don't think I've ever just been still with someone like this before." That caught me off guard. I shrugged, trying to sound casual, but honestly, I felt the same way. "Yeah, it's like the world paused, and it's just us now." He smiled, a little shy, and reached out to run his fingers along my arm. The warmth wasn't just from our bodies anymore. It was something else, something fragile and electric, like the air was charged even without the power. We talked for a bit about dumb stuff, work complaints, what we wanted to eat once the power came back on, how neither of us had actually stocked up on candles or anything. I caught myself staring at Alex more than I probably should have, noticing things I'd never really paid attention to before, like the way his eyes crinkled when he laughed, or how his fingers always seemed a little cold even though we were pressed together. Then the temperature in the room dropped enough that my teeth started clicking together again, and Alex gave me this look like, "Seriously, are you gonna freeze to death on me, or what?" So we huddled closer, our legs tangled, and I felt this rush of warmth that wasn't just about keeping warm anymore. It was something deeper. At some point, I guess the nerves kicked in because I reached out and took his hand, just this tiny, tentative squeeze. He didn't pull away. Instead, he laced his fingers with mine and gave my hand a gentle squeeze back, like a silent promise that we weren't just stuck in the dark together. We were here, really here for each other. The night stretched on with that quiet intimacy, no need for fancy words or grand gestures, just two guys sharing warmth and space, figuring out what that meant. I can't even say when I started paying attention to the way his breath hitched when I brushed a stray hair from his forehead, or how his hand slid up to rest on my chest, right over my heart. Then came the moment. We'd been sitting there for hours, the cold forgotten because the warmth between us was impossible to ignore. Alex looked up at me, eyes wide and a little hesitant, and I swear my heart did this weird flip. He didn't say anything, just reached up and brushed his lips against mine. Soft, tentative, like testing the water before diving in. I froze for a second, surprised, but then everything else just melted away. I kissed him back, slow and sure, like finally finding the missing piece of a puzzle I hadn't realized was incomplete. It wasn't perfect or flashy, just honest and raw, like the rest of that powerless night. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us said much. I just rested my forehead against his and felt this quiet kind of peace settle over me. The world outside might have been dark and cold, but in that tiny, powerless apartment, everything felt a little brighter. Minutes later, the lights flickered back on, the fridge hummed, the heater kicked in, and reality crept back. Alex blinked, like waking up from a dream, and laughed nervously. Well, there goes the mood. I chuckled, but deep down, I knew that night had changed something. Because even with the power back, I didn't want to let go of that warmth. And honestly, neither did he. The lights buzzing back to life threw the apartment into sharp relief. Suddenly, every little thing, the clutter on the coffee table, the crooked picture frames, the half-eaten dinner, was laid bare under the unforgiving glare. And yet, none of it mattered. What mattered was the quiet electricity still humming between Alex and me, the kind that no outage could kill. He pulled back a little, rubbing the back of his neck like he wasn't sure what just happened, and I wanted to reach out and tell him it was okay, that I wasn't freaking out, that I felt the same way. Instead, I just laughed softly and said, "Well, now I'm never going to complain about power outages again." He smiled, that easy, warm smile that's somehow both teasing and sincere, and said, "Yeah, me neither." We settled back into the couch, this time with the heater kicking in, warming the air around us but still nowhere near as warm as the space between us. I was surprised how comfortable that felt, like the blackout had stripped away all the usual distractions and left us with something real. After a moment, Alex nudged me with his shoulder and said, "So, about earlier, I felt my face heat up and I tried to play it cool. What about it?" He laughed nervously. "You know, the whole sharing body heat thing turning into, kissing?" I grinned. "Yeah, I think I remember." He looked down, fiddling with the hem of his shirt, and then back at me with this almost vulnerable expression. I guess I've been wanting to do that for a while, but never really knew how to say it. That hit me harder than I expected. Here was Alex, usually so guarded and casual, opening up in a way that felt new and brave. I reached out, squeezed his hand again, and said, "Me too." I just didn't know if you felt the same. His eyes softened, this little spark of relief flickering across his face. Looks like we're both thinking the same thing. We spent the rest of the evening like that, talking, laughing, and sometimes just sitting quietly, the kind of silence that's comfortable because you're sharing it with someone who gets you. The blackout might have ended, but the night held a softness I wasn't ready to let go of. At some point, we moved to the kitchen to finish the cold pizza that'd been forgotten during the chaos. Standing side by side, Alex reached out, brushing a crumb off my cheek, and I caught his hand, holding it a little longer this time. "Promise me something?" he asked suddenly, looking up at me. "Anything. Next time the power goes out, let's do this again. No distractions, no noise, just us." I smiled, feeling an honest hope I hadn't felt in a long time. Deal. As the night wore on, I realized something important. Sometimes it takes losing everything familiar, light, heat, electricity, to find something real. And with Alex by my side, I wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. The next few days after that blackout felt kind of surreal. Like, on the surface, everything was back to normal. The lights were on, the heater was humming, and the usual chaos of city life rolled on. But between Alex and me, there was this unspoken shift. I caught him looking at me differently, with this quiet smile that said, "Remember that night?" We started texting more, but not the usual, "Hey, what's up?" kind of texts. They were the little things, a random song that reminded him of that awkwardly warm moment, a meme about surviving power outages, or a quick, "Wanna come over tonight? I promise the power'll be on." And I'd laugh, but also feel this weird flutter, like I was falling deeper into something I hadn't quite expected. One night, a few days after the blackout, Alex showed up unannounced. I was halfway through some homework, sprawled on the couch with my laptop, when the door clicked open and suddenly there he was, standing in the doorway with that grin that made my stomach do flips. "Thought I'd drop by," he said, shrugging like it was no big deal. I smiled back, heart racing a little. "I'm glad you did." We settled into the living room, and this time, the power was solid and steady. The glow from the lamp made the apartment feel cozy, but it couldn't compete with the warmth sitting right next to me. We fell into our usual easy banter, but underneath it was this tension, this magnetic pull neither of us wanted to ignore. As the night grew later, the conversation drifted from silly TV shows to more personal stuff. Past relationships, fears, hopes. Alex was surprisingly open, and I found myself sharing things I usually kept locked away. It was like that blackout night unlocked something inside us, a permission to be honest without fear. At one point, he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered, and I felt that same spark from before. "I've been thinking about that night a lot," he admitted quietly. "Me too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt real, like not just some weird accident. He nodded, eyes searching mine. "Yeah, I don't want it to be a what if. I want us to try, whatever this is." My heart was pounding, but I nodded. "I want that too." From there, everything felt like it was moving forward. But not too fast. We spent more evenings together, sometimes cooking dinner, sometimes just sitting and talking. The power outage was a distant memory, but the connection it sparked was very much alive. One night, we ended up back on the couch, the city lights sparkling through the window. Alex pulled me close, his hand warm on my waist. "I'm glad we shared more than just body heat that night," he said with a grin. I laughed, leaning into him. "Me too." But beneath the laughter was something deeper. Hope, maybe, or the thrill of starting something new in the middle of the everyday. I wasn't sure where it was going yet, but with Alex, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. A few weeks into this us thing, the novelty of the blackout story started to fade a bit, but the feelings? They didn't. If anything, they got stronger, more real, more complicated. It was the kind of thing that sneaks up on you when you least expect it. Like, you think you're just hanging out watching whatever show on Netflix, and then suddenly you're realizing that you want to know every little thing about this person sitting next to you. One Friday evening, Alex invited me over to his place. His apartment was way different from mine. Brighter, more organized, with shelves full of records and books. It felt like stepping into his world, which was exciting but also kind of terrifying. I wasn't sure if I should be nervous or just act like I belonged there. We made dinner together, which was mostly me trying not to burn the garlic bread, while Alex expertly chopped veggies. When I finally managed not to mess anything up, we sat at his kitchen table with plates full of food and this golden light hanging over us. It was the kind of quiet moment that feels small but important. After dinner, we moved to the living room, sprawled on the floor with a few records playing softly in the background. There was a comfort in the silence between us, but I could tell Alex was a little restless. He kept glancing at me, something unspoken hanging in the air. Finally, he broke the silence. "Can I ask you something a little personal?" "Shoot," I said, feeling my heart pick up for no good reason. He hesitated, then said, "What do you want from this?" "From us?" It was a question I'd been steering around in my own head, but never said out loud. I took a breath, trying to be honest. "I want to see where this goes." I don't want it to be just a fling or a fun thing. I want something real. What about you? Alex looked relieved, like he'd been carrying a weight. Same. I've been burned before, but with you, it feels different. I don't want to mess this up. I smiled, reaching out to grab his hand. We won't, I promised. We'll figure it out. That night, we stayed up late, just talking about everything, the good, the bad, the messy parts of our lives. It was the kind of vulnerability I hadn't shared with anyone in a long time. And when I finally left his place, I felt lighter, like I was carrying a secret happiness with me. But of course, nothing is ever that simple. A few days later, I got a message from Alex that caught me off guard. It was casual on the surface. Can we talk? There's something I need to tell you. But the way it hung there made my stomach twist. We met up at a coffee shop, somewhere neutral, and he looked nervous, running his hands through his hair. I wasn't sure how to say this. He started, but I think you deserve to know. I'm still figuring out some stuff about myself. I haven't been in a serious relationship in a long time, and honestly, I'm scared. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my face calm while my mind raced. Thanks for telling me. I appreciate the honesty. He looked up, vulnerability clear in his eyes. I don't want to lose what we have, but sometimes I get scared I'm gonna mess it up. I squeezed his hand across the table. Look, no one's perfect. We'll make mistakes, but we'll do it together. If you're willing to try, I'm here. He smiled, relief washing over him. Yeah? You really mean that? Absolutely, I said. That conversation wasn't easy, but it set the tone for everything after. It was a reminder that love isn't just about the good moments or the sparks. It's about showing up when things get complicated, when fears creep in, and when you have to choose each other over and over again. I guess the blackout night was just the start. What mattered was what came next. Two guys learning how to be real with each other, with no power but a whole lot of heart. Things didn't magically get easier after that coffee shop conversation, but somehow they felt more honest. Alex and I were no longer skating around the edges of whatever this was. We were diving into it, awkward and real and all. It was a slow burn, the way relationships often are when you're both figuring yourself out. And honestly, I liked that. It meant there was room to grow, to stumble, and to find our way together without pretending we had it all figured out. One weekend, Alex invited me to help him move some stuff out of his old apartment. It was a half-joking way of saying, come over, hang out, and maybe do some heavy lifting. But I didn't mind. I liked the idea of being part of his life in a practical way, not just emotionally. We met up early Saturday morning, me armed with boxes and a questionable amount of caffeine. His place was a bit of a mess. Half-packed boxes, random clothes strewn about, and that lingering smell that only old apartments get. But it was his space, and standing there felt like a little window into his world. As we hauled furniture from his old apartment to the U-Haul, I caught myself stealing glances at him. How his hair stuck up in that one spot, how his laugh was a little louder when he was exerting himself, how the tired lines under his eyes softened when he smiled at me. I felt a warmth spread through me, the kind you don't always get to feel so plainly. During a break, we sat on the curb, sweating and catching our breath. Alex pulled out his phone and played a random playlist. The song that came on was soft, something about late nights and taking chances. He looked over at me and said, "Remember that night the power went out?" I laughed. How could I forget? Me neither, he said, his voice a little softer. It feels like a lifetime ago, but also like yesterday. I nodded. Funny how one night can change everything. He smiled and squeezed my hand. Yeah, it did. The rest of the day blurred together, moving boxes, making terrible jokes to keep the mood light, and stealing moments when we could just lean into each other. By the time we finished, the sun was dipping low, casting this golden light over the city that felt like a promise. Back at his new place, we collapsed on the couch, exhausted and covered in dust. Alex looked over at me and said, I don't just want you to help me move stuff. I want you to be part of this, my life, my future. I felt my chest tighten. It wasn't just the physical exhaustion. It was the weight of what he was saying. I want that too, I said quietly. He reached out, brushing my hair back from my forehead, and for a moment, everything else faded away. No worries about what ifs or fears, just two people holding on to something real. That night, as I walked home, I realized that love isn't always fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, helping each other pack boxes, sharing a playlist, holding hands on a worn-out couch. It's messy, imperfect, but it's ours. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. A few days after the move, things started to settle into a rhythm that felt comfortable, like not boring or predictable, but the kind of easy that comes when you stop trying so hard and just let things be. Alex and I were seeing each other regularly now, cooking together, binge-watching shows, stealing kisses in the middle of the day when one of us popped by unexpectedly. One evening, I showed up at his place unannounced with 2 tickets to a small concert downtown. I'd noticed him mention the band a few times, and I figured, why not? It was spontaneous and perfect. When he opened the door and saw me holding the tickets, his face lit up in this way that made me want to freeze time. "You're the best," he said, pulling me inside. The concert was in this cozy little venue with dim lights and a crowd that was just the right size. Not too big, not too small. We found a spot near the back, leaning into each other as the band played songs that somehow felt like they were written just for us. At one point, during a slower song, I glanced over and saw Alex watching me with this soft, almost shy smile. My heart did that flip again, the one that still caught me off guard even after weeks together. After the concert, we walked through the city streets, the night air crisp, and filled with that faint hum of life that only a city has after dark. We didn't talk much. Words felt unnecessary. Instead, we held hands, fingers intertwined, like we were silently promising each other something. Back at his apartment, things got quiet. We sat on the couch, the glow from the streetlights casting long shadows on the walls. I could feel the tension in the air, the kind that's not uncomfortable but charged, like something important was about to happen. Alex looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Can I be honest?" "Always," I said, my voice a little shaky even though I didn't know why. He took a breath. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about how fast this is moving, and if I'm ready for it." I nodded, relieved he was opening up. "I get it. I'm scared too." He smiled softly. "Yeah? I guess that's a good sign." We leaned into each other, foreheads touching, and for a moment nothing else mattered except that connection. The fear faded into the background, replaced by this fierce, quiet hope. That night we talked for hours, about fears, futures, and everything in between. We didn't have all the answers, but we had each other. And sometimes, that's the most important thing. Over the next few weeks, the city felt different, brighter, warmer. I found myself looking forward to every message, every shared meal, every quiet moment where we just existed together. One rainy afternoon, as we were curled up on his couch watching old movies, Alex paused the film and looked at me seriously. "I want you to meet someone," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "My family," he said. My heart skipped a beat. Meeting the family always feels like a big deal, and I could tell it meant a lot to him. "Are you nervous?" I asked. He shrugged. "A little, but I want you to be a part of all of it." I smiled, squeezing his hand. I wouldn't miss it. That invitation felt like a milestone, a step towards something more permanent. And as the rain pattered against the windows, I realized just how much I wanted to keep building this. Power outages, awkward conversations, and all. The night I met Alex's family, I was a bundle of nerves wrapped in a hoodie and second-guessing everything about myself. It's funny how you can be totally comfortable around someone, but the moment you step into their world, all your usual confidence seems to vanish. I kept replaying that blackout night, the way things just clicked between us, and trying to remind myself that whatever happened next was just another step, not a test I had to pass. His apartment was a little cluttered, filled with the kind of cozy chaos that only comes from years of shared memories. As soon as his mom opened the door, I felt that warm rush of something familiar, like being welcomed into a story I didn't even know I wanted to be part of. "Alex, honey, "You brought someone," she said with this big smile that made me want to relax right away. He introduced me as we stepped inside, and I did my best not to gush or stumble over words. His family was easy to talk to. His mom had this infectious laugh, and his younger sister was full of questions, mostly about how long we'd been together and if I liked dogs. Hint, I love dogs. At dinner, the conversation flowed naturally, but I could still feel Alex watching me out of the corner of his eye like he was gauging how I was doing. When I caught his glance, I gave him a small smile that said, "I'm good. This is good." Later, after dessert, Alex pulled me aside while his family cleared the table. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said, honestly surprised at how comfortable I felt. "Your family's great. You were right." He smiled, relief softening his features. "Thanks for coming. It means a lot." As we walked home under the glow of streetlights, the city felt quieter, softer, like it was holding its breath with us. Alex took my hand, and I squeezed it gently. "That was a big step," he said. It was. I agreed, but I'm glad I took it with you. Over the next few weeks, things started to feel more real. We made plans for weekends, met more of each other's friends, and even started talking about trips we wanted to take together. The blackout night that brought us together felt like this distant starting point, but every day since then had been about building something stronger. One night we were walking home from a late dinner, the city around us humming with life. I looked over at Alex, and for the first time, I felt ready to say something I'd been holding back. "Hey," I started, trying to sound casual but feeling the weight of the moment. "I've been thinking." He raised an eyebrow, curious. "I want us to be serious," I said, heart pounding. "Not just casual or see where this goes. I want you in all the messy, complicated, amazing ways." He stopped walking and turned to face me, eyes searching mine. "I want that too," he said softly. More than anything, we stood there for a moment, the noise of the city fading away, just the two of us in this bubble of possibility. "Maybe we should tell people," I said, half joking, half serious. Alex laughed. "Yeah, starting with the power company. No more outages, please." I grinned, feeling lighter than I had in months. Whatever else happened, we'd found something real in the dark, and now it was time to see how bright it could get. In the quiet weeks that followed, our lives started to weave together in these small, steady ways that felt like building something that would last. No dramatic declarations or sweeping gestures, just everyday moments that made me realize how much I wanted Alex by my side. One evening, we were back at my apartment, curled up on the couch, the kind of lazy Sunday where the only plan is to do absolutely nothing. Outside, the city lights flickered softly, and I half expected the power to cut out again just for old time's sake. But this time, I didn't need the blackout to remind me how close we'd become. Alex shifted closer, resting his head on my shoulder. I felt the familiar warmth spread through me, the kind that wasn't just from shared blankets or body heat, but from something deeper, something steady and real. "I'm glad we found each other," he murmured, voice low and sure. I smiled without looking at him, because sometimes words aren't necessary. Instead, I just squeezed his hand, feeling the weight of everything we'd been through, the fears, the late-night talks, the awkward beginnings, and how it all led to this quiet, perfect moment. Our relationship wasn't perfect, and it never would be. We'd have arguments, doubts, days when life felt complicated. But I knew now that those things didn't have to be obstacles. They were just part of the story we were writing together. As the evening stretched into night, I realized something else. Love doesn't have to be about fireworks or grand plans. Sometimes, it's about showing up, being honest, and finding comfort in the ordinary. And in that simple truth, with Alex pressed against me in the city humming softly beyond the windows, I felt more power, more light than I ever had before.